Welcome back to Accedo Playback, the podcast discussing industry news, trends, and tech advancements in the OTT and streaming industry. I'm your host, Neil Van Zyl. The past year has been a little tumultuous, and we've seen an aggressive increase in mergers and acquisitions. We've seen the major streamers continue to raise subscription prices with minimal impact to overall subscriber numbers, and the adoption of AI agents across a variety of workflows. Today, we'll be discussing how these forces are going to continue or change and what else to expect in 2026. To chat a bit more about this here today are Accedo's co-founders Michael, Lantz, and Fredrik. Michael, Fredrik, thanks for joining. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you again, Neil.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years since we've had these two on the podcast, so quite a bit has happened. It's great to see both of you. Let's jump right into it. Michael, looking back at 2025, what were the biggest macro surprises for you? Maybe especially focused around advertising or consumer demand that has shaped your revised outlook for 2026?
Well, it's obviously a very big question, so let me try to narrow it slightly. I think, from a macro perspective, there are a lot of things happening in the world, but I think in a macro perspective, in a media context, obviously we are seeing that let's call it the cost of living crisis, impact consumers' willingness to spend on subscription services in particular, right? So there is a slight shift towards ad-funded services. I find that is the case globally. At the same time, we're seeing large streamers want to have the cake, eat it. So they're adding advertising into their subscription services. I think this is a trend that will continue. But I think one of the things that I find is absolutely fascinating is that there is still this, and I'd love to get your take on this, Fredrik, that there is still this idea that the more stuff you put into the same subscription, the higher you can raise the prices. It seems like people have forgotten the learnings from the cable industry where there is a sticker shock for consumers. If they buy things in pieces, they don't realize how expensive it is. But if you get one invoice or one credit card bill or whatever, which is sort of very, very big, the churn risk is much higher. And most recently, obviously, we're seeing Netflix trying to take over Warner Bros. And the big question is, will they continue to run these services separately, or will they try to enhance the Netflix offering? I think it will be a mistake to put everything in one offering. I don't think consumers will pay twice of what they're doing today.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that that model will break very soon. It's not going to be sustainable. And as once they add sports or maybe linear content, that model will not work anymore. So I think maybe that's the prediction for next year, or at least the next 18 months, we will see someone breaking that model.
Yeah, I mean, jumping in a little bit around just talking about the domination of ad-supported, the numbers from Tubi this year have been incredible. The Fox has done a really good job with that. And Netflix bringing in the ad tier, they've seen obviously increased demand around that. I believe it was Hulu back in 2023 or 2024, but they published their ARPU, and the hybrid ad SVOD subscriber was the most valuable subscriber from a dollar perspective monthly. So they're actually making more on these hybrid users than they are just on their pure subscription users, which, obviously pushes quite a bit of incentive into trying to bring in more of these ad tiers. So the industry is abuzz about the continuance of mergers around major large SVOD services, as well as other businesses in the industry. What type of combinations do you think could actually deliver value next year? And I'll point this one to Fredrik.
Well, I think to circle back on what we just discussed, something that would be slightly different than add value would be if someone actually dared to do something slightly different, to add not just their existing content catalog and existing model, but also added live sports or linear or something that would break the model to some extent. I would like to see someone try that.
So in your view, Fredrik, if I can ask a follow-up on that, do you see then that the large streamers will effectively become what was previously called an operator, but without the network then?
It's full circle, yes.
Yeah. So would they then package their content in sort of mini services? I don't want to call them channels, but in mini services that you can sort of create sort of bundles around?
I think that would make sense. I don't think everyone will follow this strategy, but I think at least someone will need to try and differentiate following this model.
Do you think these are going to be like separate app plays, or will it still be all localized in one application, and then there's just going to be all the different upsell opportunities to get different packages on top of that?
That's a good question, but I think if we've learned anything, it's that not everyone is not the same thing is not for everyone. So I think they will try with different models, experimenting.
Yeah, I think there is a reason why if you're doing stores, that sort of people tend to like different packages in stores. Packages by sort of the package of the consumer experience, right? You go into a clothing store, you don't expect to get Lego toys because it's not what you expect when you go in there, right? It's a different experience. And I think sometimes just by cramming everything together, you sort of lose sight of what is really important for consumers that are interested in a particular kind of media. So I think while it sort of makes sense from a pure subscription perspective, I think disaggregation could certainly be a way forward. It will be super interesting to see, because I think some, or generally any OTT providers will go the other way and will try to add more things into the service.
It would, of course, be a bit ironic if we ended up in the same place as we started. But even if that similar scenario would happen, I think there is still more choice for the consumers in this case. So there's still, it's a big improvement.
Talking a little bit about more choice. One of the hottest tickets in OTT today is still sports rights. Michael, why do you believe that they're being pursued so fervently still? And do you see that dynamic changing over the next year?
I'm not sort of a huge sports fan, so I'm still amazed about the amount of money that goes into the sports rights. But I think one of the key aspects here is that it's super marketable. It's so easy to get attention because you can use, when you get the rights to sports, you can also use the rights of the players for certain use cases, right? Marketing of the event. You can drive sort of attention in a way that is very difficult to do for sort of drama content. Some exceptions, of course. But generally speaking, you can attract awareness with sports in a way that is very difficult to do with other types of content. So if you are a sort of a new service, or you want to sort of really make a dent in the market, I think acquiring sports rights is a simple and fast way of doing that. Now, the problem in my mind, why I don't understand why people paid so much for it, is that it tends to be extremely cyclic. You have people sort of starting as a subscriber at the beginning of the season, and they churn at the end of the season. Then you lose the rights, and they will follow the rights to somewhere else. So you really need to make this work, you really need to have a separate subscription type for sports. I think a season pass or something like that. And you need to charge on a level that is not comparable to normal SVOD services. To just take the sports and throw it into your normal package, I think is wasted money, to be honest.
I guess that's a good point. I mean, Netflix has brought the WWE in, but they haven't really let that impact their prices. But I look at the DAZNs or the other streamers, and for every major sport, they're obviously it's an add-on, or it's an additional cost, which, like you said, you have to if you're trying to pay for these rights. But it can get a little tough to swallow after a while as a consumer. Fredrik, any thoughts?
Well, I mean, there are. Of course, the major sports rights are extremely expensive, but we're seeing more and more niche sports are being explored. So that could be an option, of course, but that will never entice the major soccer fans potentially. But there are niche sports rights that are obviously much, much cheaper, and maybe you can have a critical mass aggregating some of those to get sports fans to engage with you.
And by the way, it is harder to make an ad-funded sports service. You talked about that previously, because it is more expensive to distribute live sports events. You need quality, you need stability and low latency and so on. So it is very expensive. And at the same time, you get these spikes of traffic that you don't get with a normal sort of drama-centric SVOD service. So it is very expensive. At the same time, it is difficult to get the amount of ad impressions for a sports event to actually justify the cost. So you need to have a paid service for sports, which then, of course, adds to the complexity here. You need both advertising and a paid service to make it work. So it is quite complex. I think for a vendor like us, obviously, that complexity is something we embrace. I think the interactive possibilities and the use cases that you have for sports makes it extremely exciting from an Accedo point of view. So I think for us, this increased interest in sports as an OTT service is absolutely fascinating and an important driver for our business and our knowledge.
You mentioned again there that it is a little tough to monetize properly in an AVOD solution for sports, but there is some interesting things coming out of this, right? I mean, Fox or Tubi is a great example of this, where they're hoping for just broad spectrum attention, eyeballs. They want as many eyeballs on as possible when they're putting those sports on Tubi, and then when they want to monetize, they bring it into their walled garden. It's an interesting strategy, but one of the other things with sports is the difficulty to do ads properly. But because it can be a little jarring if you're not doing it appropriately. But there is some more advanced ad formats that work well for sports, right? Interactive ads, display ads, overlays can be a little bit more leveraged in these sort of scenarios, so that you can still see the game going on while this is happening. So there's a lot of interesting stuff from a technology standpoint there. Fredrik, so I mean, it's been quite an interesting couple of years in the media and entertainment industry. If someone came to you today wanting to start an OTT service, what are the first strategic decisions that they need to make before even touching the tech?
Well, I think I would like to understand if they really have a target audience where they have a good understanding of their willingness to pay. That's a good start. And then I think in many cases we have seen over the years that some startups, they have great niche content or great mainstream content, but in order to be successful long term, you need a mix, right? In order to be sustainable over time. So I think I would advise them to have sort of a sustainable content model that would work over time, because that's I think is a mistake we've seen a few times. And then of course understand that in these days there's not one solution to the monetization story. You probably need to have a mix. So you need to bake that into the model from day one. That would be my 3 main advice.
Michael, any follow-up thoughts? I'm quite fond of, and I realize that this may not be for that startup that you talked about, right? But I think one thing that I feel that many are forgetting is the possibility of actually charging extra for something premium in the service, right? It's something that has been discussed quite a lot. It's hard to charge extra for, I don't know, higher image quality and so on in this day and age. But I think something that I would like to see explored more often is to charge extra for early access to content. So if you have a subscription, you know that there is a release of the content on, I don't know, the 1st of December, and you want to get access to that same content 2 weeks before, you can then pay something extra for that. So have micro payments in the service. It's something, I would be really keen to explore something like that. I think it will open up possibilities of monetization of a core fan audience that would love to do that.
That's a great call out. I mean, there's obviously some concerns around DRM and whatnot there, but it's certainly a good way to get your hyper users or your super users to upsell a little bit. Michael, what niche or service types do you think are best positioned for 2026? What opportunities does the never-ending fragmentation provide for some of these smaller video services? I think 2026, well, in general, I think this is not only for 2026, but I think there continues to be a market for special interest
OTT services. I think it's easy to focus on the big ones, right? With Netflix or Amazon Prime or HBO and so on. But the special interest ones, which will target a specific interest, whether it's fishing or bear hunting or whatever. You want to have a specific audience. You can reach that specific audience, that sort of unique interest in different ways, more cost effective than doing sort of these wide marketing campaigns. And of course, the content is slightly cheaper, so you can sort of find that audience. You can tailor make a piece of content for that audience, and you can then build up a community which is actually quite profitable. You don't need 1 million subscribers. You can probably find a very interesting niche group with 100,000 subscribers if you do it properly. I think there's endless possibilities of doing this in this day and age. Personal interests tend to be fragmented. There are so many unique interests that people have today. So I think this is a missed opportunity. The question is just, how do you find your target audience? But I think in this day and age, it is possible to find that target audience.
And just to add to that, what we've seen the last few years is that these niche services have typically higher growth and lower churn. So that's, of course, a big benefit for these type of services.
Yeah, it does help for a little bit more stabilized forecasting on your revenue growth, which is obviously quite helpful. Okay, well, let's jump into something I think everyone has a few thoughts on. Agentic AI. This has been a big conversation piece already this year, and it's already been pushed into quite a few different workflows across the industry and within our organization. What use cases do you expect video services to adopt first in 2026 with regards to Agentic AI? Is there going to be a big push towards recommendations, or where do you think the actual benefits lie? I'll leave this open for both of you. I'd like to hear from both of you at some point for this one.
So I think there are a lot of value with Agentic AI, especially if you talk about operational excellence. And there are a lot of things you need to do for running a service successfully. If it's finding out content or metadata that is wrong, or triaging support tickets, or having customer support beyond the stupid bot system that you are interacting with today, right? So I think there are many cases where these Agentic AI agents or components or whatever you want to call them can add a lot of value by helping companies to do this work that needs to be done. And we've started exploring this, as you know, with our platform, but I think we're only scratching the surface here.
I would agree with Fredrik that I think the big gains would be on the operational side for the OTT services. But just to complement the picture, from a consumer perspective, I mentioned earlier about the challenges about sort of finding your target audience. I think there should be possibilities for AI agents to support with that, both from the consumer side. I think if I'm interested in fishing, find my service and subscribe to the service for me or whatever, or I'm giving away an OTT service for my dad who's really into gardening, whatever, right? I think that there are ways of doing that from a consumer point of view, but also from a vendor point of view. If you want to find your target audience and you're struggling with finding sort of the ways where your target audience exist online, I guess. I think that there are possibilities of leveraging that type of tools as well. I mean, things are changing extremely quickly on the AI side. So I'm sure some of these things already exist and are up and running, but I'm equally sure that most of those didn't exist 6 months ago. So stay tuned to that in 2026. I think there are plenty of things happening.
Talking a little bit more about AI on the org side, Compose obviously is something that we announced at IBC, a unified control hub that orchestrates intelligent, adaptive, data-driven OTT experiences. How do you feel that this is going to help for front end specifically, or even just observability?
Yeah, so I think one of the benefits with Accedo's Compose set is that it's not tied into any specific use case. It can be applied to many different use cases. So I think from an well, saying that, I think the ones that will likely be used initially for are the ones that are easiest to monetize, right? So operational aspect, if you can sort of save cost or improve quality, and that will in turn sort of reduce churn and so on. So I think that those will be important, of course. From an observability point of view, I think it's about letting the agents discover problems before a human would discover them, to be a bit more proactive rather than reactive. I think it's something that you would like your organization to be. But as we all know, if it's humans, people have good days and bad days. You can only do so much with processes, right? Because at the end of the day, most OTT services can only afford so many people. So you are reliant on certain people. They may be sick. They may have a bad day. Their spouse may have broken up with them, so they're not sort of fully attentive to the work ahead of them. And I think if you're adding agentic AI as sort of an additional tool for observability, you're sort of increasing the quality at a very minimal cost, and then you can sort of complement that with the actual employees as well. But I think there is a good case to be had for that.
Jumping way over to something completely different here. Netflix recently deprecated is beginning to deprecate their casting feature from their mobile apps. What do you think this signals for the industry? Is this the death of casting from mobile apps, or do you think that this is just kind of a repivot?
It might be as easy as the fact that smart TV is now the dominant screen, right? So if you look at, that's the most common device people are using for their OTT service. But then, of course, we know that there is a cost to maintain all these features on many platforms, and the fragmentation is it's tough. But I've also seen speculation that this might have to do with the thing that Netflix wants more control in case they are introducing sports rights.
Yeah, but if that was the case, you could potentially just remove casting from sports. It's not super tricky. But so my theory, do you think it's something about ad revenues? That if you're casting, then it's mobile ad revenues, which are lower than the big screen revenues?
Yeah, but they should be able to see that they're actually watching on, right?
I mean, that could, of course, be a security thing, right? That they have discovered that the casting is not sort of good enough and there's too much piracy related to casting. But otherwise, I think, maybe it's just what you say, Fredrik, the effort to make everything happen and tested for all of these different sort of combinations of devices is just too much. It is a use case which I know is used by consumers. So obviously it will annoy. Many consumers are never using casting, obviously. But for the 5% that are using casting, this is obviously a downgraded functionality, which is unusual for someone like Netflix to consider. They're always sort of improving functionality. So there must be sort of an underlying reason why they don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, but I wonder how many are actually using it. And I didn't see any big warnings ahead of the actual when they actually remove this, so they can't be too scared of downgrading this.
My use case is obviously when you go on holiday and you're in a hotel room and you want to use Netflix or something, then obviously you cast it on the big screen, so your kids are calm and nice while you're having a glass of wine on the balcony or something. So I think there are those use cases, and I don't really see the harm in casting it to the big screen compared to watching it on a small screen instead.
Yeah, it could very well be just that the smart TV penetration is now at the level that it's just not as beneficial. I mean, the casting is obviously great if you're just if you have your little Google TV plugin or your Chromecast box plugin. But at this point, like with the fragmentation continuing, but the CTV adoption increasing as much as it is, it very well could be just the costs are just not worth the benefits at this point. Super interesting. I appreciate the insights there around the ads. That's really neat. Michael, what are some of the things that the industry is paying too much attention to? So what's coming that maybe the industry isn't focusing enough on?
Yeah, well, I think one of my points I'm always trying to make is that sort of over the past couple of years we have seen a huge industry focus on advertising. I think that's fine and understandable. I don't question that in any way, shape, or form. But I'm not really seeing that innovation. I talked about it earlier. I'm not seeing innovation on the sort of subscription models or payment models, right? I think history has shown that consumers can be quote unquote tricked into paying more if they feel that they get more value for things, right? So just by experimenting with how you charge for things, whether you charge with some simple things like annual packages and monthly and quarterly packages, and you can get sort of discounts if you sign up for longer periods. If you have these tiered packages, or if you're upselling sort of premium features, I think different audiences, different demographics will respond different ways on these experimentations. But I'm not seeing the experimentation. That's my point, right? I cannot say what is best and whether it's even working for a specific demographic, but I'm not seeing the experimentation. I would love to see how things like that would impact both churn and average revenue per user.
Do you think maybe going the other way, like perhaps the Klarnification of pricing would make any changes, going by a pay weekly sort of thing, or a quarter of the monthly subscription price?
That's an interesting verb you're mentioning there. But Klarnification, well, I think you mean effectively then the opposite to what I suggested, that, well, let's buy a weekend pass to Netflix and they will charge you $15 for that, something like that.
Yeah,
it could be possible. But the problem is, I think that so many consumers complain that streaming services are too expensive, but in reality, they're not that expensive, right? It's I don't know, even super expensive Netflix subscriptions are like $20. I don't know, but it's hard to see that anyone would pay more than $20, right? It has to be cheaper than that for a weekend pass. So I think there's a lot of hassle for relatively low value, and you still sort of have the risk of customer complaints and all of that. So I think shorter than a month, I don't see much value of that, unless it's super premium, right? So you have a new movie release. Maybe you can have that as sort of what was all the rage, I think 6-7 years ago, PVOD, premium VOD. You have a very high premium price for something in the window before it was released on streaming. I haven't heard much about that the last couple of years.
Fredrik, any follow-up thoughts?
Well, just going back to the question and about attention, I think in general, I would have expected that. I think there's a lot of attention on the revenue side, but less so on the cost side. And I would have expected more focus on the cost side. I think there are many, if not all companies, can improve a lot on the cost side to review their total cost of ownership. And I would have expected that the macro climate would have forced them to do that. And we're seeing this is happening, but it's happening slower than I expected.
So is there anything in particular, Fredrik, that you've been surprised that people haven't done? I assume you come from a tech side, so this is from the technology stack point of view.
Yeah, I'm just still, I sound like a broken record because I've been saying this for the last 5 years at least, but compared to the e-commerce industry, no tier 2 player are building their own tech stack. But in our industry, almost everyone is. That just doesn't make sense to me.
No, I think you should instead Go to one of the best companies in the industry, and we will help you doing this cheaper and better. Sorry for the plug.
No, it's good. I would think we're getting close to time here. Is there anything else that either of you want to mention for next year, or your thoughts before we wrap it up?
Well, in general, I am quite excited about the state of the industry. It's been a tough sort of 2 years with first a cost of living crisis and then sort of a bit of a hangover from that period. But we're seeing now sort of an inevitable consolidation in the market with the Harmonic MediaKind deal being announced earlier this week or last week. But it will inevitably be more sort of consolidation happening. And I think this will be good for the industry. I think vendors will need to be more efficient and deliver more value to customers. And I think that there will be increased possibilities of doing that with further consolidation. So I'm quite excited about what's happening at the moment.
And I'm looking forward to reading the behind-the-scenes book about the Netflix Paramount deal, Warner Brothers. That should be fun.
There will be a lot of lawsuits for that process, I'm sure. So we will follow it all in our favorite media.
Fantastic. Fredrik, Michael, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode. We'll attach a link to the article for Michael's 2026 predictions to the description of this episode. If you have any questions about what we were chatting about, feel free to reach out. You can send us an email at playback.podcast@accedo.tv or reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you like what you heard, please feel free to like or subscribe. That's all for this time, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.